Yeah, I didn't see that happening. I mean, credit to him for coming back on Detroit the way he did, but he's going to have to do that a whole lot of times before anybody forgets that those guys were taken after him. London Fletcher's my guest. London, as I mentioned off the top, you are the postgame analyst for Washington this year. There has been a ton of change in the organization over the offseason. As a former member of that team, what was it like for you to watch all of that unfold?
You know, when I played for the Burgundy and Gold, for the Redskins, I wanted to represent the franchise, the former players, Mr. Snyder, the owner, my teammates. I always wanted to represent that organization to the best of my ability. I took pride in coming out and playing for the fans each and every Sunday. When the changes took place, starting with the name, I thought it was necessary. Here I am as an African American man wanting social equality for us as people of color, and then if the Native Americans they didn't view the Redskins name as honoring them, then who am I to want to hold on to something that they didn't feel like was an honor? So I applaud Mr. Snyder and his wife Tanya for making a change and making a lot of changes. I thought the hiring of Jason Wright as the new team president, I think that's a phenomenal move. And even if you go back and think about even before the name change, the hiring of Ron Rivera as the head coach, that was a home run hit. So a lot of changes have taken place. I think the organization and the franchise is headed in the right direction. I'm really excited for the future and what the Washington football team has in its future.
London Fletcher is joining us here in the Jungle. London, when you look back on your time there, like culture and leadership are words that get thrown around all the time, but you're a guy who made an impact in every locker room that you ever stepped in. As an example, your teammate in Washington, Santana Moss, has said that he changed how he approached the game. What was your approach to the game, and how aware were you that guys on offense were noticing and modeling themselves after you?
I was not aware of it. I think it was one of the things where I really took a great deal of pride in just my approach to the game. So I just went about, my business on a day in and day out basis, just trying to be the best player that I can be, not just for myself, but for my teammates in the franchise that I represented. Santana, for him to say that, I appreciated that. And that's just, I think is one thing if you're a leader to kind of talk the talk, but you have to walk the walk. And guys respect you for what you do more so than what you say.
We're talking to London Fletcher. London, you mentioned Ron Rivera. Last month he announced that he had been diagnosed with cancer. What was your reaction to that and how he has continued to coach throughout the whole process?
It was it hit home for me for a couple of reasons, and I shared this recently on Tops. My wife, she's actually battling breast cancer currently, and so I know what Ron's up against and what he's facing, and then how he's going to be dealing with it. It's a tough situation anytime you're dealing with cancer. The treatments that he's going to have to go through and he's going through currently is going to be an extremely difficult process for him. And then he's going to be coaching football, and I know the grind that those coaches go through, and so he's up for. It's a big challenge, but he has a tremendous support system. His wife, the organization, his players, his assistant coaches, the entire organization, is behind him and supporting him. But there are going to be some times where he's already mentioned how his energy level is not not great sometimes, and that's one of the things that my wife definitely dealt with when she went through the chemo, just the energy level and things like that.
No doubt. London Fletcher is joining us, and I appreciate your thoughts on that. Listen, before you go, when you consider everything that has taken place with that organization, it would have been very understandable if the team struggled on Sunday against Philadelphia, especially when they fell behind 17-0. So what did you make of the way they all responded after trailing by 17 and the way they came back?
When they fell behind 17-0, I was like, man, what the heck? This is not a good thing. Here we go again. But what I love was the team takes on the identity of your head coach, and I don't care what sport you play, what sport, that's how it is. And if you think about Ron Rivera, and we're talking about him, and and how tough he is, how resilient he is. He doesn't blink. I live in Charlotte. I've known Ron. I've watched his Panthers team. He's not going to blink. He's not going to make excuses, and that's how that team performed on Sunday. No panic. Team was down, then somebody made a play. Fabian Moreau, he makes the interception, and next thing you know, it's 27 unanswered points. But it started because of the leader that Coach Rivera is. If you don't have him as a leader, they don't win that ball game. It might be a 30-point loss for the team, without Coach Rivera. But that's a total reflection of him and how resilient he is, how tough he is, and how steady he is as a leader.
So, London, one last thought. Speaking of tough, the defense had 8 sacks, so I know you had to be impressed by that. On the flip side, though, Carson Wentz took an absolute beating in that game. We know that Philadelphia's got a lot of issues on that offensive line. But if you're Philadelphia, how concerned are you when you see your franchise quarterback and a guy who's dealt with injuries in the past get hit that many times?
They should be very concerned. I say, they had a Zoom meeting at Carson Wentz the other day. Or I say they had a meeting at Carson Wentz, and it was not a Zoom meeting.
Right.
There was no social distancing taking place with with Washington's defensive line. You got to understand that the Eagles, they had a situation where Lane Johnson, he was a late scratch. He's dealing with some injuries. Jason Peters was signed to replace their starting right guard. He had to flip over to left tackle because of an injury to Andre Dillard. So that unit, even going into the game, I think they only had about 3 or 4 practices together as a unit prior to going into that ball game. Then Lane Johnson was a late scratch. So, the main thing is trying to get healthy, especially at the right tackle position. They got to get Lane back. He's one of the best right tackles in football. If they don't get healthy, it could be a long year because we know Carson has a ton of injury history, and he won't survive 16 games if he takes that type of beating on a week in and week out basis.
Right. How about one last thing? I've got to own this. Like, I've been on the Browns bandwagon for a while right now, and things are not going so well. Then they bring in Kevin Stefanski, and the hope was he would maximize the talent that they have. Then they go out and they get hammered by Baltimore in the season opener. So you've got a new head coach. You've got plenty of hope. How tough is it then? I mean, one thing to lose, but to go out and get beaten the way they were, how tough is that for them? And how important is it for them to bounce back right away?
It's extremely tough. I'm from Cleveland. I know all about the history of the Browns. I went back and I looked at the game and I saw, some of the things and how Baker, he didn't look great. So there's some concern there. Kevin Stefanski was brought in to get the best out of Baker. Him and Odell Beckham Jr. They were not able to connect on some of the throws down the field. Baker had some accuracy issues. So those things are concerning. Now they have to improve quickly because they play Thursday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. I will say this: it's early, and you have a new head coach, you have a new offensive system, you have a new defensive system. This wasn't your typical off season in terms of the amount of work you were able to do in off season. No preseason games, so I'm not going to panic just yet, but they must, over the next, I would say, 4 ball games, they have to show some improvement. Otherwise, that fan base is going to start to clamor, and things could get kind of ugly.
That is a good conversation right there. A 16-year NFL vet, a Super Bowl champion, an analyst for Tops on CBS Sports Network, which is a great show, and an analyst for the Washington football team's postgame show. And do not forget, a member of the Washington football team Ring of Fame. London, appreciate you coming on the show. Great to have you back, London. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks for having me.
Hey, listen, are you craving some protein after a good workout? Don't make a shake. Do not eat a bar. Instead, this time, grab a bag of beef jerky from Old Trapper. So you might ask, why Old Trapper? I'll tell you why. Because Old Trapper beef jerky is tasty and tender, and it's made with real strips of steak and quality spices that are smoked over a wood fire. Plus, I know the folks involved. Old Trapper is a family-owned business. They take smoked beef very seriously. You can taste it in every single bite. Like, who wants dried out, tough beef in a bag? No one. It's like eating a shoe. Old Trapper, though, is the real deal. It comes in 4 amazing flavors: old-fashioned, which is sweetened with a touch of brown sugar goodness, teriyaki, peppered, and hot and spicy. Next time you want a great protein and energy snack that you can have anytime, anywhere, reach for some Old Trapper. Look for Old Trapper in the Clearview bag. You can see the quality you're buying that way. Look for it in major retail stores near you. Clones, if you do not see it, just ask for it by name because no other jerky compares. Old Trapper. What's your beef?
Sunday, it's an NFL on CBS doubleheader. The early games highlighted by an NFC matchup between the Giants and the Bears. And you've got the Broncos squaring off with the Steelers. And in Game 2, Patrick Mahomes and the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs take on the Chargers, or you have the Ravens taking on the Texans. It all starts with JB and the fellas on the NFL Today at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, Sunday on CBS. And I am making my first appearance of the season. And I'm doing so here in Cali. I will be socially distanced. Not just from 6 feet, but 3,000 miles. So we've never done that before. This shiny studio that they built for me here in Cali. I'm going to do my hit from our studio here in California, so I'm fired up about that. Been communicating with the man, Drew Kaliski, about my topics, and I'm really excited about that, so make sure you check that out. Noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. I will do a hit from this studio. All right, so let me change up on you really quickly and talk some baseball. I think for a lot of you, it might feel like, well, two things. Why are you talking baseball during NFL season and the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs? Why are you talking baseball? And then moreover, why are you talking, quote, regional baseball? Padres, Dodgers. Man, because I'll tell you why. We're talking about the most exciting team, the hottest team in baseball right now, the Padres, going up against the best team in baseball right now, the Dodgers, and they're playing for the division, and it's really chippy. And we're coming down to the last 10 games of a wild, wild year. That's why. I shouldn't have to say so. Let me put it to you another way. Like, if you've ever been to a music festival, then you know how there are multiple bands that play at the same time but on different stages, right? So the headliners get the real estate. The artists who were printed up in the smaller font on the flyer are somewhere off to the side playing to a smaller crowd. But if you've ever been to a music festival, you know that the smaller bands off to the side sometimes put on the better show. Sometimes you want to be off to the side and you want to see what's going on over there. Like last night, I can make the argument. The Dodgers and Padres put on a better show than the NFL doubleheader when they were playing back-to-back on the main stage. If you have not been paying attention, then maybe you did not know last night was, in fact, an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. The unstoppable force now are the red-hot Slam Diego Padres. They welcomed the immovable object, the 7-time defending NL West champ, LA Dodgers, to Petco Park. San Diego riding an MLB best 7-game heater. The Dodgers holding on to a 2.5-game lead in the division with their ace Clayton Kershaw on the bump. Kersh has been nothing short of vintage this year. Maybe the velo's down a bit, but it doesn't matter because this dude has been spinning Uncle Chuck, slinging his slide piece to the tune of a sub-2 ERA, 5 wins, and a career-best whip. And for 5 innings last night, he mowed right through the NL's second-best lineup. Padres righty Dinelson Lamet matched him the entire way, though. Halfway through that game, we were watching an old-school pitcher's duel that Kersh was barely getting the better of. And then things went from somewhat respectful and cordial to extremely chippy with a single swing in the bottom of the 6th. Game was 1-0 at that point, Dodgers. And then Padres center fielder Trent Grisham finally got to Kershaw and tied it up with this moonshot.
In the air to deep right field for Grisham. It's gone, and the Padres tie it 1-1. One swing of the bat will get it done. Home run number 9 of the year for Grisham has tied this game off Clayton Kershaw.
Oh, we got some chirping going on. Trent Grisham crushed this baseball, and he watched it. He was in the batter's box when that ball was struck. There was no doubt about it.
I'd say it's on.
All of that's true. All of that was true. Grisham did watch that baseball. I'll tell you who didn't. Clayt. He didn't even turn around. He knew. Biggest home run in the biggest Padres game in years. In my